Hello, in this video I'll be showing you how to deploy your website to GitHub Pages with the help of GitHub Actions. We'll go over the creation of the workflow, what you need to add to it, and then all the parameters you need to set to make the deployment happen. So first things first, we'll need to create our new workflow file. This needs to live in the root of your repository within the .github/workflows directory. For this example, we'll create a new one called deploy.yaml, and then we'll start by adding a little bit of boilerplate. So we'll give our workflow a name. We'll also set up an event that the workflow should trigger on. In this example, whenever we make a push to the main branch, the workflow will run and it will make our deployment for us. You can change this to be any branch you like. You could also make it so it doesn't push on a specific branch and it pushes on all branches, pull request, tag name, creation, you name it. There's a bunch of different events you can use. I'll link to the documentation to that below. The next step will be to actually create our job name. So we'll call this one build and deploy. And we'll also set a bunch of parameters up here as well. So we'll list the name of the machine or type of machine that the workflow should run on. In this case, we'll use Ubuntu. And we'll also set a concurrency field as well, which will prevent our workflow from doubling up if we make multiple deployments or commits all at the same time. So only run one job at a time and it will queue the remainder ones up. So the first step in our workflow will be to check our code out. So we will create a action/checkout step, which will download all of our repository code, our source code, into the workflow every time this workflow runs. We'll be able to manipulate it, we'll be able to push it to different branches, we'll be able to do kind of whatever we want. And whatever we have available to us whenever we check our repository out will be available to the workflow as well. The next step here will be to configure our node version, if applicable. If we're using node 14 whenever we're developing our website, we want our workflow to also use the same version. So for this, we'll utilize this action/setup node step, which will accept a parameter to tell it which version of node it should run within the workflow. Okay, once we've set up node, we can start building our application. So the next step will kind of be a generic step where we'll run a bunch of commands that we have available to us. So for my example, I'll start by running npm CI, followed by npm run build, which will then build our web application within the workflow, and it will spit out all the deployment artifacts or the production artifacts to a specific directory. So in this case, it's going to be the build directory. The final step here will then be to actually make the deployment. For this, we'll leverage an action I created myself called github-pages-deploy-action. This will make all of the commits for us to the specified branch. So for this, it accepts two parameters, or two primary parameters. There's a bunch of them which are listed in the documentation, which I'll link below. The ones we care about the most right now, though, is the folder one and the branch one. So in folder, we'll add the output from our npm run build command. So for that, it will be the build directory, which is what we'll put there. And the branch will be gh-pages, which is going to be our branch that we're going to use to store our GitHub Pages app, basically. So last thing to do, if it's not already configured, you may need to go to the settings of your repository and go to the Pages tab. You may need to then configure which branch GitHub Pages is serving from. If you've already got this configured, that's great, and it should hopefully work. Keep in mind, you may need to make some changes to how your application is built. I know React, you may need to change the homepage property in the package file if you're deploying from a subdirectory, but you'll need to refer to the framework documentation that you're using to get more details on how to kind of handle that.
And that's that. If you visit the Actions tab within GitHub, you should see a workflow run. Once it completes, if you visit the specified branch that you deployed it to, you'll see all of your files will be moved automatically, and you should be able to visit the link provided in the GitHub Pages tab within settings.
Yeah, that's it. Hopefully you've learned something. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments. I can be reached on Twitter and GitHub. My name's James Ives. Hope you have a good day, and have a good one.